GM, GM. So, daily levels. Today is Thursday. It's the 21st of Feb. And looking here at Bitcoin first. So, yesterday we had a false breakout on the upside. So, I talked about this. It was leading into the New York session. Price moved up, false breakout to the upside, flushed all the way down, and took out any stops that were chasing the longs in earlier in the session. Held down near the lows at a double bottom. Got a reactionary bounce, a short squeeze, pushed all the way up to 52.5. Has been bleeding ever since. So all morning, there's just been no bid, pure bleed on BTC. And that's probably because it's far, far, far too early for it to break out. I said this yesterday that I was surprised that BTC was even going for a breakout yesterday and felt that that would probably be a false breakout because of that. And it just hasn't consolidated long enough. The only way that I would see it going up from here, two ways. One would be if it gets a deeper shakeout, right? So something like the path we had here. If it has a deeper shakeout, then it can reverse and go on higher because that'll take out a bunch of leverage, take out a bunch of stops, wreck a bunch of people. If it doesn't do that, if we stay up here, what it needs to do is something like it did over here, which is consolidate and compress for a long time. It has to take time to build up. And I don't know which one we're going to get. I lean towards it holding and staying in the compression because we've got a bottom and a second bottom here. And with that reversal in that wick, I would imagine that we don't just fall straight below. We could, but I would imagine that we fall down to here, bounce back up, and kind of just chop sideways until Friday, until options expiry. Because before Friday, 50k should be support, 52k should be resistance roughly, something around that. I wouldn't be surprised if we just chop around and compress in this area until the end of the week. Looking across the market in terms of some of the funding. So you can see that from yesterday before the dip, funding was quite elevated. I talked about this in yesterday's daily levels. So a bunch of coins have gone back to more neutral. Large caps, mid caps, small caps. They really reset there after the dip. Some of them picking right back up. So that's a bad sign, I think, for alts. If Bitcoin goes sideways, alts will go lower and just take out the lows a couple more times. I was just looking at, like, I'll take an example of something in the mid cap. So like, let's do VChain. VChain had super high funding, right? Then it got flushed out, went back to more neutral, but right away it started getting long again. So you'll see this here off the daily open, and that's why Bitcoin's been bleeding, because I think traders have just come in and gone a little bit too aggressive right away. So VChain funding was super high over here. We had the shakeout yesterday. Funding reset. We had the bounce. People just aped straight back in, buy the dip, and now it's bleeding. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of these alts have to take out the lows one more time and set up their bottoms from there. If not, even go lower than that. But let's imagine that the bottom is close for Bitcoin. Alts probably go down and take out a bunch of alts probably go down and take out yesterday's lows. Because to me, what that's showing quite clearly is that people just were long, got flushed out, re-longed the dip right away. Right? You see it across the market, like Ripple, they were long, they got flushed out, they re-longed the dip. So nothing too concerning at that from that perspective for me. You can see it; it's just super clear. People were too long Ripple over here, got wiped out, bounces up, the ape back in into a lower high, flushes them down. So, yeah, people, I think they're in for a bit more consolidation, a bit more chop. Something like Ripple here, I think a couple of weeks from now or whatever, it ends up, back above, maybe it dips down below, back above. It's this key pivot level. It keeps reclaiming it, losing it, reclaiming it, losing it. So above this is bullish, below it is bearish. I don't expect it really to lose it again. It was a massive wipeout at the start of January. Came back down, retested. I mean, I'm not a Ripple fan at all by any means. I think it's literally the worst coin in the market, but it's probably more likely to bottom out and go up than down from here. Um, but really, for me, it's all about what does Bitcoin do next. I'm watching to see if it can stay in this tight compression, which would indicate that all of this is going to get left behind for now. You have to first of all be looking at and saying, right, there's loads of room for price to flush down and form a higher low, but everyone's expecting that. Everyone wants a dip. Dips are getting bought. The demand is high, and to look at that as well, I want to look at this far side. I don't have to get yesterday's flows up yet. Uh, okay, so yesterday's flows were uh, much lower. So yesterday we had 135 million of net inflows. That's quite a bit lower than was expected, or not really lower than what was expected, but it was lower than the previous week, and the volumes were quite high. So that's interesting. The volumes were quite high, but there wasn't that much flow. I saw the volumes, especially on some of the smaller ones, the Valkyrie and Bitwise. The volumes were like far higher than they have been on any day. So I was sort of estimating if there was super high volumes across all of them, we might see decent inflows, but apparently not. So there must have been something else going on, some rebalancing, or I don't know, just some trading or whatever. But yeah, that's going to now take the wind out of the sails a little bit. Still net inflows, still positive, and this now for me confirms what I was saying last week, that now the traders' expectations of the flows doesn't match reality, and we've probably seen a lot of buying by people who think that 500 million a day is like the new norm, and that we should just keep having 500 million a day. Whenever that's not the case, and it's not realistic, and it never was realistic, but the market tends to get ahead of itself from time to time. That's just how we go. So I'm back to the exact position I had last week. I think that when the market really adjusts to the fact that ETFs are not just going to flow in 400 or 500 million every single day, and that's fine, because if they did that and kept doing that, they'd end up eating the whole Bitcoin supply within a couple of years. So I would say keeping it above 100 million a day consistently is, I think that's huge. I think that's a big win as well. Like 100 million at current prices, if you have 100 million a day, you do some quick maths here, and uh, you've got 250 trading days roughly, 25 billion a year, and that's at obviously that's based at current prices. So around at 50k, if that was 25 billion flowing in, 25 billion flowing in at 50k. Yeah, that's 500,000 BTC per year. There's only like usually 1.5, 1.8 million. Sorry, it's only usually 1.5, 1.8 million BTC that's actually available traded on exchange. So that's great. Like that's still going to be super, super high flows. A lot of people think that like if there's 10 billion in year one, it's a massive success for the ETFs. And so to track at 100 mil a day is not going to be that simple, because obviously just over time, less is going to flow in terms of new inflows. So far we've had total of 5,000, we're excluding GBTC here. Or we're including it, sorry, we're removing it. So net. Net, there's been 5,000 across how many days? Probably about, I'm not sure how many days it is now. It must be 25 or 30 trading days now. 25 maybe. So we're tracking well above that 100 a day, 100 BTC a day, or 100 million a day, sorry. GBTC daily flows. Some of these charts are important to watch too. Like The GBDC daily flows were super high at the beginning. Now they're reducing. Started to pick back up again a little bit, but still the trend is down, which is good. And then the trend for the other guys is way up. Right? Cumulative flows. Well, that's cumulative, sorry. Yeah, so that's obviously going to rise. And then you can see here across the groups. So yeah, I think it's good. Overall, I think it's bullish. Overall, the ETFs are a long-term, slower moving. Every month, some money's going to flow in. Every month, investors will buy some, and every quarter, new players will come in. You'll also hear next quarter, you'll hear about like who was buying, right? So a lot of the buyers are going to be institutions or big, maybe sovereign wealth funds or whatever. So in Q2, just around the time of the halving as well, you're going to see a bunch of announcements by who's been buying the ETFs. It's not all your granny and granda's fucking pension 401k money. There's going to be real big buyers as well, because this is the way that some of them can get access, liquid enough. It's in the TradFi rails, all that kind of stuff. So all good stuff. But I think in the short term, expectations versus reality have gotten a little bit skewed towards people thinking that there's going to be just infinite flows. And that then makes it, for Bitcoin, especially then when the rest of the market's still a bit frothy, definitely seeing the funding rates come down a bit, which is nice. And if we look at it from the other visual here, which is the funding rate and open interest across the market, I'll just look at all, so I'll exclude ETH and we'll look at ETH separate. So a nice little flush out of open interest where things have gotten a little bit high for Bitcoin and especially for alts. Funding rates starting to tick back down, which is good. They don't have to go all the way back to neutral as a whole for the market to keep going up. The full reset to neutral, like we saw back over here, right? That was after a sustained period where it was above, and even here on alts, like alts were above for a few months, 2 months, almost, nearly 3 months. And then there's one reset which sets it back. But that puts us into a lengthy then, reaccumulation. So they're starting to tick back up. That's fine. What you want to see is when it gets too high, resets back down, too high, resets back down to a more sustainable level. And especially for BTC. The fact BTC is doing all of this with really generally neutral funding and slightly positive is good. That shows the real demand is still spot. It is still a spot-driven market. It is still an accumulators market below all-time high with the ETFs and the constant bid. Like, it's just something that is, when you think about it, Bitcoin went to 69K and 64K, right? So twice. Went to 64 and then 69 in 2021 there was no consistent spot bid from people who were accumulating to hold for the long term. Obviously, there's always people buying Bitcoin, but we didn't have this source of flow that was just all spot, which you do now. And as long as that remains positive, that means there is money flowing in net. If it starts to turn negative, right? So GBDC keeps selling and there's not as much demand on the other 9. That's going to open up a window for a bit of weakness in price. But over the long term, you've just opened up a brand new pool of capital to buy in. Now, yesterday, which I think, judging by the weakness here that we're seeing after the rally or after the bounce, so short squeeze them up, back down we go, people get too short. I expect probably this to go into, yeah, here it was, sorry. Yeah. So unless it reverses pretty soon, it's quite likely we might follow this red path where I still don't think we lose 50K before Friday with the options expiry. But if we come down here and we're chopping around at the lows, that would tell me that the initial reaction wasn't one of real strength and that the market's not compressing at this 50-52. It's probably leaning more towards a bit of a dip down and a flush, and then up higher. If it can reclaim from here, right? So it's been down only all day. We're talking now like 9-10 hours of just straight down, almost no bounce. People can get overly, start shorting or panicking or selling or whatever. And we could see it still follow the blue path. The blue path's still possible. But for the blue path, you want to see it really push towards 52 and keep pushing around that level for it to compress and squeeze nicely. Again, if you go back and look at over here, each time it pushes to the lows, it should push right back up. There should be enough demand to push it back up, and keep it in a tight consolidation. Otherwise, we're probably going to tackle and take out these lows, especially this one here at some point. And if it did that too, if it chops around here and then takes out this bottom, be on the lookout as well for a recovery there. If it does take that low and come back inside, then you've got like basically 3 touches on the same support. And as long as it gets back inside, that's quite strong. So it doesn't have to flush all the way down, especially if this takes, the rest of today, tomorrow, and into Friday, and we're still chopping around here, and you see that funding is continuing to decrease. Altcoin funding is trending down, right? People aren't just buying dips. That could lead us to where Bitcoin might hold at 50, maybe dip below 50 briefly, but actually stay up at this level and not have to go all the way back to 48. But where I would actually like to get, aggressive again on longs on top of my spot bags would be obviously a test of that pivot 48, because when you zoom out, still see us as having a new upper range, which is like 48 to 58. That's an area I see that there's a big gap of volume, and not much trading really happened between 48 and 58. Bitcoin tended to, except in February, March, April, there was a little bit, but every time it got above 58, it couldn't hold. And when it got below 48, that was big resistance. Got above 58, below it. So back below 48, that's not good. If we start trading below 48 for too long, then you can see us going all the way back down to 40. I don't expect it, but obviously everything has a possibility. So take a look at ETH. ETH has been stronger. ETH has had a little bit of a dominance run. But just like I said yesterday, it's not a good place to buy if you're trying to get long ETH, right? If you think that the strong weekly close is a good time to buy spot and you're holding it for months, that's fine. But as a trader, you want to see ETH either drop back and then hold with its own compression up at the highs or its own consolidation higher, or like we showed over here, some kind of deeper dip where it actually sets up a proper higher low. So, overall, things look good. I wouldn't have too much concern. I wouldn't be adding longs here. Still think that we're after having a strong two week rally, and I'd like to see consolidation. Whether it pulls back or not, I don't know, but at least I want to see consolidation. So I'm just going to wait, see how the price develops, and that's it. Right. GM. See you later on the live stream, 5 p.m.